Oh,
Hi, welcome. We're letting people in. We'll be getting started here in just a moment.
Rosales was captured in Ciudad Acuna. The Gulf Coast Defenders Task Force and the Mexican authorities, they worked to get him into custody.
Someone's listening to the news.
PD custody live right here.
All right, everybody, welcome. My name is Jana Weiss. I am the Student Life Coordinator at Coleman College, and we teamed up with an Academic Success Center, also known as Tutoring, to give you recipes for success. Today, we are talking about the Juggling Act and balancing all of our priorities in our life. We have brought in Counselor Cynthia Castellanos to talk to us about that today. Please help me welcome her. She is wonderful to come and speak with us today about the Juggling Act. You're on mute.
Hello, my name is Ms. Cynthia Castellanos. I'm one of the counselors here at Houston Community College. I actually work at the Southeast campus. So I'm going to discuss, basically, I'm going to share my screen with you guys regarding the presentation of juggling life and school and work and everything that you're currently dealing with. You don't have to have your camera on. You know, if you don't want to, you can actually turn it off just so you guys know, I'm about to share my screen. Okay, so let me go ahead and share my screen with you guys. All right. Okay. So, all right, let me begin. All right. First and foremost, I want to congratulate you guys. You guys have started, a difficult decision in itself, just enrolling in college. You know, you're like, man, it's been so while. And it's like, you're coming in, you're like ready to concentrate about yourself, your education. I tell my students, you need to be aware that you're going to be carrying so many hats. You are a student, you are a partner, you are a family member, you are a worker, you carry so many hats. And part of it is you trying to factor in and prioritize what's important at this moment. One of the things I tell my students is it's great to prioritize your academics, but you also need to be in charge of the fact that there may be some concerns going on. If you focus too much on your academics, sometimes, your relationship feels it, maybe your health feels it. It's important that you have an even balance. So this isn't about pushing you to be like, yes, all academics is, what you need to do. This is wanting you to be the best you possible, a best student, the best employee, the best family member. So we want you to learn how to balance yourself, because again, you need to focus on those personal relationships, because those are your sense of support. That's what's important. Having your academics is wonderful, because again, it is an opportunity for you to be successful in the future. But again, wanting you to have that wonderful balance within your life is also important. Similarly, if you are too preoccupied in your work, too preoccupied in your relationship, then you do see that factor where it does affect your academics. Some of you have probably already experienced that now. And you're kind of like, man, I don't know why I didn't do well in my classes last semester. I don't know why things are always popping up. That's where I tell my students, you start feeling that strain.
Miss Cynthia?
Yes.
Your slides are not showing.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought they were showing. My apologies, guys. That's interesting.
We'll let you know when we see them.
No, it's not you guys. It's me.
Okay, now we can see it.
My apologies, guys. So again, reading back into the fact where, you want to make sure that you balance everything out. Prioritizing your academics is not necessarily ideal. You have to find that even balance. Because again, if you're not balancing that out, of course, you're going to have other factors go into decline. I tell my students, like I stated before, also focusing too much on, your relationships and, other factors that are not academic will also cause a strain. because you will end up on academic probation, academic suspension, and then sometimes that even leads to financial loss, where you're no longer approved for financial aid. And these are fact, now you're thinking, oh my gosh, I have to work more hours to make the money that I need to pay for my classes. So it's all a factor. And I tell my students it's really important that you really try to balance things out. You have to learn how to juggle. Um, you know, Part of it is to making sure you're aware if you do have concerns immediately. Like if you know for a fact that, there are other issues of, like you have a huge financial burden, it's critical that you understand, okay, I need to take care of this. That's my priority as opposed to something else. It's important that you self-reflect on that. All right. Now, I'm going to talk about self-motivation, self-discipline, time management, the ability to fulfill your basic needs, communication, and the cycle of change, basically how to change your mindset. One of the things I tell my students is, yeah, motivation is the hardest. Sometimes I see some of you guys, I'm sorry, I'm going to move the screen a little bit. I apologize because it shows me you guys. But one of the hardest things that I've noticed too is, it's so easy for us to lose motivation because, well, we always prioritize something else because something else always pops up in our life. It always does. It's always going to happen. And so of course we put, our coursework, in the back burner. We're like, oh, I'll do it later, and that procrastination leads to other, concerns. You have to figure out the work and life and school balance because you have to really remind yourself why you're in school to begin with. Why are you here? What is it that your goals, and what is the overall reason why you're attempting to get this education? I'm gonna assume everybody's idea is like, I'm trying to do better than what I'm doing right now, financially, financial security, other priorities that you might have, being able to send my child, to that great school, these kinds of things. One of the things, and I'm so sorry, I have to move things around, so I apologize, so that you guys can see my screen. I don't know why it blocks it. Managing your time, I tell my students, you need to know how much time you're actually devoting for each task. It's a lot of self-discipline. How much are you really squeezing in a day? How much are you really, and how much time are you really wasting? I have a lot of students who are like, yeah, I'm gonna, go work on this project, but that project only takes 45 minutes, but they've blocked 2 hours, and they focus those like the rest of that time in something else, like on their cell phone or, their social media. So what are you really investing? I tell students, even though you can carve out as many hours as you want in a day, if you're not really focusing those 4 hours on that project, but only 45 minutes, then you've wasted the rest of that time. You really need to know where your time is being invested. One of the things that I tell my students is you need to start using, and you guys are more than welcome to see, it's called time blocking. Everyone here has the ability to manage their schedule, and yes, things do pop up, but everyone here, especially because we all get a syllabus, we all know what our work time is, all of us have a regular work time at one point, sometimes we're working in the evening, sometimes we work, your boss at least gives you a work schedule so that you can adjust and manage your new schedule time. But part of it is getting organized and doing it. That's the hardest part. It actually takes some time to sit down and actually write down how you want to manage your time. But scheduling is so important. You really have to take the time to do it, especially like during the first weeks of classes, sit down and be really honest with yourself. I have students who are like, yeah, I can do math problems like in an hour. I can do 30 math problems in 1 hour. Now, are you setting yourself up for failure, or are you challenging yourself? You need to really think about that. Sometimes it's okay to be vague. You don't have to be that specific. I have to do 30 math problems in an hour. You could be like, I'm going to do 15 to 30 math problems in that hour, and, hoping that I can complete it. If I only get like 20 problems done, That's okay. There's nothing wrong. You've invested very well in that time, but maybe next time you'll be like, you know what? I'm going to challenge myself. I'm really going to go back and maybe try to see if I could do 25, but I'd rather it be done right than just getting it done. That's important. One of the things I tell my students is you can use any type of calendar, that works well. I love it. There's, dry board eraser calendar now. You guys can put up there, put your schedule, your kid's schedule, your any other schedule, or you can go to Walmart. I love Walmart. You can go and buy a notebook calendar. Those are just as effective. I've also encouraged my students, and I'm going to show you this. I've also encouraged my students, and I actually found this. You can actually go to the educational app store and you can look at each app that's available for you. Now, don't spend too much time on here. I'm showing you this because I want you guys to be like, wow, okay, this is impressive. But I want you guys to kind of be aware that, this is so that you guys can see that you have the ability to go in and look at this app store and see, for example, hey, is using the Google Calendar effective for me? What does it do? What will it show? It gives you a screenshot, it gives you a description. Is it applicable to a lot of, other devices that I currently have? This is something that I encourage my students to do because I think it's one of the best things you guys can do is finding what works best for you. Okay. And I'm trying to move my screen, so I apologize, guys. But I'm trying to have you guys see a little better on this. Let me stop sharing really quickly. But again, it's one of those, you really kind of have to see on your own what would work best. And of course, any one of these, there's Wonderlust, there's Trell, there's Totus, there's each one you can look at. And you just see what's more effective for you. I know for a fact that, as a therapist, we actually have our own calendar that we schedule, because it's, required by us by law. And it's so effective. I love it. But again, what works best? Don't spend too much time on this though, okay? Because I don't want everybody going in here and going like, okay, now I'm gonna find a new app, it's gonna work for me. Because then you spend the majority of your time just finding the app and not actually scheduling your time. That's my biggest concern. So let me go back to this. Okay, all right. So, and I apologize, guys, but I'm having to move you guys around because I'm trying to make sure you guys can see my screen. Again, time blocking, it doesn't mean that you're lacking your choice, because I can hear somebody say, well, I can't really like put everything in there because things happen unexpectedly. It does, and life does happen that way. You have children, they get sick, of course you can't time block that, but pretty much you can time block a lot of the things that you have going on in your life, your work schedule, your study time schedule, times that you have to take your child to the basketball game, all of this can be part of that. But it doesn't necessarily have to be very specific. It can be vague. I tell my students, you can be vague because not everything is that specific, instead of like saying, hey, you know what, I need to, complete these 30 problems and they all have to be linear equation problems from math. You can go in and be like, okay, no, as long as I can do 30 problems in math, whether it's from, linear equations or, other, abstract, that works just as well, but again, it really just depends on you. I tell my students to, it's not necessary for you to complete that task. Remember, no one's sitting there telling you, well, it has to be done in this hour. If not, you broke the rules. No, part of it is going through it gradually and working through it. Even though, for example, the best, I guess, example would be like doing a research paper. Some of you guys are taking an English class. Your final is submitting a research paper. It from the beginning. You know that it's a research paper while your professor is going in, teaching you how to do abstracts, teaching you how to do citations, teaching you how to do MLA or APA writing style. Which one are you using? While you're doing that, that the end project eventually is going to be your final paper. So while you're going through it and your professor is explaining to you what an abstract is, you should already have thought about a subject that you want to work on. Think about what your abstract is going to be and schedule it slowly but surely throughout. Now, it is distracting because a lot of you guys are like, wow, I don't know if I can, start everything, but I still have other stuff to do. You do, sometimes you have to be able to keep detailed notes on what you're working on. Like I've seen a lot of students who are doing their research paper that automatically get an idea and they're like, oh wow, I have an idea. I can, I could do this book, because I just thought about it. I could, well, instead of like stopping everything immediately, going and researching that new idea that you have, you need to be able to leave yourself note, be able to stop a project, leave yourself notes, and be able to move into your next blocking task. Don't just sit there and be like, well, I'm on a roll with this paper, I got to continue going on. Sometimes what that does is it really kind of disturbs the rest of your schedule time that you should be focused on something else, whether it's math, whether it's assignments class that you still have to do. Because remember, you're not necessarily just taking one class, you may be taking more than one courses, and so you still have to focus on those other courses. Although math may not be your favorite, you still have to switch your mindset to be able to focus on that, but making sure that you can always go back to your research paper. Okay, I'm so sorry. I heard somebody, so I didn't know what was going on. So again, I'm going to move this around so you guys can see, spend a few minutes, like I said, writing your notes to get you prepared for the next task that you have at hand. So it's comfortable for you to leave one to go to the other. Okay. Let me go on. Make sure that you review. Okay. I can't tell this to students enough. You need to make sure that you're catching yourself. We can all fall back in that, procrastination mode where we're kind of like, well, I'll look at it tomorrow. But you need to follow up with yourself. Like, hey, how much have I done of that research paper? Am I really understanding that? How much have I done of, my anatomy physiology, structure workshop? Did I finish doing the task? You have to be able to say yourself, did I feel like I accomplished something? Do I think that I can meet that deadline that I need? Because that's what really block timing is to try to keep you on task, to try to keep you not getting so distracted. And sometimes too, I tell my students, you need to really kind of understand yourself. Some of you guys are not morning persons. You are not like, yes, I love waking up at 5 a.m. It's so beautiful outside. Some of you guys are like, no, I am not effective until 10 a.m. or 11 a.m. and I have some Starbucks in my hand. Then I'm effective. So you need to know yourself and be kind of realistic in terms of what you're able to do. Taking the time to actually sit back and kind of, say, you know what, I need to make sure that when I'm trying to study, when I'm trying to do my research paper, it's got to be somewhere in the evening because my mind is so focused. I'm awake, I'm alert, I'm ready to move. That is when you really need to start learning that's the times that you need to start blocking and scheduling for yourself so that you are effective, that you are more efficient in what you're doing. Don't worry. I get a lot of you guys are like, well, I need to be aware. Listen, whatever time works for you, however things work for you, that's up to you. I have students who can't study unless they have music on or they have the TV on, but they somehow their focus and their concentration works effectively. I'm like, look, no one is telling you how to study. You study how best works for you, but you have to do it at a time that you're gonna be able to concentrate. If you're doing it at 5 a.m. in the morning and you're not a morning person, that's not gonna work. You're half asleep. So keep that in mind and don't be too strict on yourself. Okay, because like I stated before, things do happen, things pop up. Maybe your cousin visits you unexpectedly and you're like, man, I really want to spend time with my cousin. You have that. Schedules are meant to be rearranged. You're always welcome to, but you have to make sure that you are investing the time. If you're not investing the time, it's going to be harder for you. Everybody's heard that saying, work hard, play hard. That's true. You work hard so that you can enjoy time for yourself. If you're not really investing, it's going to be hard to kind of, spend that time with loved ones and other people because you're not really getting the grades and focusing on what you're supposed to do. you know Use reminders. I cannot say this enough to some of my students, like, whatever works for you. Everybody knows, if you, I don't know, Android phones, but I have an iPhone that has a timer for me. If I am doing a task or something, I'll set up a timer. I'm like, in 1 hour you need a buzz and let me know. I know everybody thinks about, hey, well, I use a timer on my phone when I'm cooking, or I use a timer on my phone when I'm doing my exercises, so it lets me know that I did 1 hour of cardio. But realistically, a lot of our devices can be used even with this. How to study, I'm going to spend 45 minutes, studying, and then it's going to give me, an alert. That's good. You can do that, and don't forget, I don't want anybody to go in here and be like, I'm going to spend 3 hours studying because that's what I have to. I mean, give yourself breaks. I'm going to study for 45 minutes and give myself a 15-minute break so that my mind can, re-energize. As long as you're kind of catching yourself and getting back to what you need to do, that's perfect. Now, but if that 15 minutes turns into an hour, you've just kind of hurt yourself. So get accomplished, get really kind of set on what you're trying to do. And of course, sure, there's motivations with anything. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff that we get disrupted with. Not everything is going to be perfect. If that was the case, we'd all be doctors and engineers. It'd be so easy. But we're not. There's certain things that you really kind of have to focus on. So I really do encourage you guys to really do time blocking, schedule, calendar, monitor yourself, and remember, we all do it in our other daily lives, so it's nothing new. I also encourage my students to make sure you're meeting your basic needs. Okay, I cannot state this enough. You need to make sure that your basic needs is like food, water, shelter, clothing, sleeping. If you're not getting some of your basic needs met, it's gonna be very difficult for you to really focus on your academics, focus on your school, focus on anything, because maybe you're kind of like, oh, I'm moving, I'm trying to find a new house. Well, it's kind of hard for you to study and everything since you're looking at, advertising ads for a new home, or you're looking because your mind is set on something else. Same idea, same concept when it comes to looking for a job. You're like, man, I really need to work, and then you're taking classes, and then you're going to interviews, and then you're not sure if that your class is going to conflict with your work. I tell my students these need to be really done beforehand, so that it's kind of able to be able to go in and see for yourself what works most effectively. Let me go on. Communication. Well, because we talked about basic needs, I was going to do this now, but I'm going to do that now. Let me see. Well, no, I'll do it in my next slides. Okay. Communication, that's also key. And I'm sorry, I have to move this around. As students, again, like we said, you had so many roles, but part of it is you need to be able to communicate. You need to be able to communicate with those around you and those people who are working with you. I know it's hard. Sometimes, people are like, I've got some personal stuff going on. I don't really want to share. You don't necessarily have to be specific, especially when you're trying to communicate with somebody in our faculty and staff. You don't have to be specific. Just say, I'm having some trouble. I'm having some concerns, and be able to communicate, because maybe there are other options for you that you didn't know. But unfortunately, unless you communicate those concerns, we can't give you those options, and sometimes your loved ones don't know how to help you or work more very effectively with you if they don't know what's going on. If you're struggling with math and you're sitting there for an hour trying to do your math problems, and your mom's like, hey, when are you gonna get done? I need you to throw out the trash, but she doesn't know that you're having difficulty in math and you're still struggling. Well, it's going to be hard for her not to know that maybe I should interrupt when he's studying, or maybe I should see if there's someone here or around the neighborhood who knows math and can tutor him? Do I know somebody who knows math who can tutor him? These are things that maybe that type of communication would be really effective. You just don't know. Again, the key is just being able to communicate for you guys, okay? Now I'm going to talk about changing your mindset. Yay, everybody's excited, because we all like, hey, as students and even as people in general, you kind of have to self-reflect. You have to really kind of sit back and think about what's keeping you from being successful. Part of it is like, what is it? Denial is our worst enemy. Let's not lie, people, because some of us are like, no, I'm a good student. It was my professor who was horrible. Oh no, it's because I didn't have my textbook, 2 weeks in advance. Um, I tell my students, if you don't have your textbook, did you email your professor, let them know? Did they ask you, did you go to the library and see if there was a copy of your textbook that you could borrow or at least make copies of? A lot of stuff can be resolved. But again, part of it is being an effective communicator. But another one is, are you in denial? And then are you just hanging in there? You're like, oh, well, it's gonna get better. I still haven't had my textbook in 6 weeks and I still haven't had my textbook. So I'll just, go with it, Sometimes people feel comfortable, they just get comfortable and familiar with just kind of like, hey, I'm just going to go through the motions. Things are going to happen. That textbook is going to fall in my lap tomorrow, and sometimes it could just be fear of change. I tell students, you really kind of have to pre-contemplate things. You really have to really self-reflect. Part of it is finding out too, when you eventually have gotten to the point where your situation is uncomfortable, where you're kind of like, you know what? No, I can't get on suspension again. I cannot be on academic probation again. I cannot lose my financial aid. I'm just too tired. I can't keep working 2 jobs just to pay for classes because I'm not eligible for financial aid anymore because I didn't do academically well, and it's so uncomfortable, Sometimes that exhaustion, it does trigger you to start really thinking about what you need to do and being kind of self-aware of what necessary changes you need to make to be successful. You need to have that. You need to have that reality. You need to have that, hey, you know what do I really need to do? What can I do? And that contemplation is going to lead for you to start thinking about how to prepare yourself to be and want to make those changes to be a good student. Again, you're uncomfortable with the situation, and now knowing that you're like, you know what, I do want to prepare. I want that sense of hope. I want that sense of I'm able to do it because I want to be there. I want to be a good student, good parent, good worker. I want all of that. You start addressing where your reality is, and maybe what things you need to start, those thoughts need to become actions. Am I going to have to reduce my hours, so that I can spend more time working? Am I going to have to reduce my classes because I do need my job because, I still need to pay room, rent, in my life, and that's important, so maybe instead of taking 4 classes, I should have just taken 2 or 1. And again, you really kind of have to sit back and start thinking about it. What works effectively for you, what is going to be enough in your life. Remember, because everybody's life is different. I'm not asking anybody here to quit their job and be like, no, I'm free. No, please don't do that. Especially if you have car payment and mortgage that you're still having to pay. Again, there are some responsible decisions you can make though. Okay. And again, part of it is you being prepared to do so. And then finally making that preparation turn into action. That is most important. Again, we don't want that, short, immediate thought where you're like, yeah, I'm feeling it. A lot of us sometimes fall into, yeah, I'm feeling it, but we don't make our preparation into action because guess what? We are fearful of change. The idea of changing something, maybe going like, oh my gosh, now I want to work part-time, but that means I can't go out with my friends if I work part-time because I'm not going to have enough money to go out with them. Well, can things change in that way? I always tell students, there's a lot of stuff that you can do for free. I'm like, There is like Discovery Green that you can go and watch a Miller Outdoor Theater. It's free, you know. So there are certain things that you can take, you know, your preparation or plan into action. But it really takes you to really think about it and having that support behind you to really kind of change your decisions, you know. Again, those doubts are going to come into play. They always do. They always creep up on us. It's always there, you know. But part of it is you fighting your own fears of making that again plan into action and reality, you know. It's sometimes really difficult to follow through because you're just not used to it. You know, you're like, man, how can I be poor, you know, and like still be a student and like, you know, still try to enjoy, you know, dating and, you know, doing all this. I tell students, you know, there's again, dates that are not very expensive, you know, that you can do. You know, you can always go to the museum. Thursdays at the museum are free, just so you guys know. Okay. So that's free every Thursday. You can take your date there. Okay. So again, keeping that in mind. If I get a whole bunch of like chats where you guys are like, "Hey, can you tell me about the museum?" I'm gonna laugh. Part of it too is being able to keep up your maintenance. You know, again, always a fear of change, always how your situation looks. Again, it's always hard to change, you know, because you're used to it. You know, you're used to working that many hours. You know, you're used to always having that extra funds. You're used to, you know, certain things that it's just familiar, you know, you've just become familiar with. And so you kind of forget sometimes why you wanted to change. And so we have the pattern of always falling back into old habits because you know the changes always take a lot more work, you know, that in anything. And one of the things I know I use a lot as academics on here, but I can just use something as easily as your diet. You know, I have so many students who are like, I'm going to go on a diet, I'm going to lose 10 pounds. You know, it's so easy to follow that diet, like, you know, for the first week, and then the second week it might not look so, you know, easy because, you know, you have a lot of temptation, you know, your friends calling you going like, hey, let's go out. I found this new burger joint. Let's go. And you're kind of like, I really do want to go try that, you know? So again, I tell my students, be aware, temptation and all of this is everywhere, but you have to stay dedicated. If not, you will fall into bad habits. And those bad habits again, or the what ends up happening is you do go back into relapse, and it happens to the best of us. There's no ifs and buts. We've all cheated on the diet, you know. um but the worst part is that you've basically again are going to start this cycle all over again, and that's our biggest concern. You're just back on probation, you're back on suspension, you know, and how are you, you know, continuing that when eventually you're still unhappy, you know, you're still not satisfied with your academics, you're still upset that you still haven't got your financial aid back, you know, and it plagues on you, and it again causes you mental anguish, which again makes you an ineffective student because you're worrying about that. You're not focusing on your academics because you're focusing on all the other factors. I tell my students the relapse is the hardest. And one of the things as a student you really need to work hard as is really kind of having two things work for you. Two things have to happen. I always call it extreme pain, which means that like some of us, we all have a breaking point. And I tell my students that's important that you be aware of it. You know, something sometimes, like, I don't know about you, but COVID happened. And I had a lot of students who were like, oh my goodness, COVID happened. And I realized that it was so hard to have a job, you know, in this sector that I wanted to, or keep my job that I wanted to. And now I no longer have a job. And now I have to go back to school to get my education in order to be able to get a new job in what I really want to do. Unfortunately, it does happen that way. You know, it's one of the worst case scenarios because we never want that to happen to students, that you don't have a choice. Um, but unfortunately, sometimes you do have no choice but to change because there's just nothing else left for you, you know? And that's where I tell my students, you know, you really need to keep that in mind when you're you're really contemplating things. I hope nobody gets to that point, because we're trying to work effectively for you so that it doesn't get to that point. But financial loss, experience something really severe to get you to where you're actually wanting to make these changes. And sometimes, like I stated before, it's you actually sitting back and being really self honest with yourself. You have to really think about, yeah, my old habits are comfortable. Yeah, you know what? It's so easy to fall back into this pattern. It's so easy for me to kind of go in and be like, yeah, this is what I could do. Because, it is, some people, and I'm going to go into it in the next slide, some people are happy being unhappy, because they're just, that's their glitch. I'm an unhappy person and my life is always miserable, and that's just the way it is. What is it called? Misery loves company. Um, I you just become addicted to your situation. You just kind of, that's just what you are. You've identified yourself as a bad student, and you are a bad student from point A to point B to point C. And that's just because it's easy to accept yourself that way. I tell my students, you really kind of have to make sure that you identify that you are falling into that. It's called, for us here in counseling, we call it victim cycle, or you're victimizing yourself. Basically, you're like, you don't want to change. You don't know what you want. You're like, yeah, well, I want to come to school and I want to get my education, and you keep changing your program plan, because everything looks better than what you're doing, and so you're switching from one to the other, and so you're not really completing anything. Or maybe your dream is just too big and you're kind of like, no, you know what, like, the reward isn't like, it's not, the reward isn't as big as what your dream is, and you're just kind of like, no, why, like, why should I try to be a manager here, when I'm just working here and I do well enough, I'm okay. Why try to get that manager position? Okay. And sometimes it's letting your fear be bigger than you, because you have a lot of self-doubt. You don't really believe in yourself. Like, that's easy. We all, it's funny I tell my students, it's always easy to believe the bad stuff than it is to believe the good stuff, and we all have that tendency to do that, which is not a good thing, because there's a lot of positivity with every individual. You just have to be able to have that confidence to accept that in yourself. The other is, if you're attached to your problem, again, some of us, our ego, our identity is that problem. I am a bad student. I refuse to accept anything else. And therefore, why? And then you're benefiting from the problem. I've had students who are like, I'm a bad student, and then I tell my professor I'm a bad student, so he'll give me, extra time to turn in my assignment. But what if you run into that one professor who's like, okay, you're a bad student, but unfortunately my syllabus says you can't turn in that assignment late, so I can't accept it. So again, you go back into it. Well, it's just because I'm a bad student. I just don't understand, and it's not beneficial for you to want to change, because that not being a bad student has helped you along the way, because everybody was like, oh, so sympathetic, he's just bad at math, so I'm gonna have to give him a learning curve. These are things you really need to kind of think about, and be honest with yourself when it comes to what are you really perceiving for yourself. A lot of this is self-reflection. A lot of this is kind of wanting us to make you aware that, unfortunately, I tell my students, failure is no longer has to be an option, but it's really up to you, whether you want to get stuck in where you are, whether you want to stay there. You have to change your mindset. And remember, at the end of the day, no advisor, counselor, professor, or any other staff member, can force you to be a better student, have you be a better student. None of us, because really at the end of the day, you're the one doing the work. You're the one going to class. You're the one, trying to be a really good employee, going into work, checking in on time. You're the one trying to be a really good loved one with your partner, making sure you're there. Again, it is really ultimately up to you on how you change your mindset, how you make and invest on that. Okay. One of the things too, I tell my students that we do here in counseling, I'm sorry, I'm trying to get out of my screen. so I want to show here at HCC where you have the ability to actually be able to go in to talk to us. I want to share this too. Go in here. If you go under student support services and you click on counseling, this is a counseling webpage that you can go to. If you ever want to talk to somebody, because you're like, I really feel like I need to have that motivation, that support. I really feel sometimes I want to talk to somebody because I feel my loved ones are like, well, how long are you going to be in school? Why are you getting out? I feel like I don't have that support, but you want that support. You're always welcome to make an appointment to see any counselor here at Houston Community College. There's a list of all the counselors. Maybe you want to see one close to your campus. That's fine. And if you're struggling because you feel that maybe you have a learning disability, you can also go a learning disability, any type of disability, but again, you have to self-disclose. We unfortunately can't make any, I can't look at a student and be like, I think you have ADHD. I can't. Unfortunately, you do have to bring medical or psychiatric documentation, but you can request ability services or accommodations to be done for you. And you can speak to an ability services counselor. But our counseling office is always available to our students. Like I stated before, there's always the ability to go in and speak to a counselor. We also have a website called Basic Needs. Now, remember I said you want to make sure you meet your basic needs. You have room, shelter, food, water, all of these are being met. If you go under our basic needs resources, you can fill out an application if there's more that you need, but we do have a food bank. Some of the campuses have food banks that you can go to. If you're thinking about, hey, how do I pay my, water bill, my electric bill, we have a link that you can go to that talks about resources and services that you can talk to that can assist you. We actually do contact United Way. They're like the best ones that we contact for our students because they have the best resources and up to date. Okay, so all of this is here for you guys to go to. I don't ever want you guys to not know that this is here and available for you. And I will put this site on the chat. I know they asked me to do that, so I'm going to do that. And you can go in there at your leisure for this services. And again, like I tell my students, we are not here to judge or anything. We want to make sure that you feel comfortable in everything that you do and how you want to proceed. But part of it too is making sure that, you make that self-reflection and want to make those changes and want to make these things happen for yourself. So that is the end of my presentation. I'm going to go back to our host so that she can have, if she has any other questions. You guys
Can
have
you
any
go ahead and take it to the tutoring homepage?
Yeah. Oh, I'm
Since
sorry.
you're there?
Oh, yeah. Sure. Yeah,
Just
yeah.
do a
Okay.
search. Go in a search bar and just put
Okay. Yeah.
tutoring.
Totally. Let me go back in here since I'm in here. But it's under student services, and let me move you around. It's going to be on the left-hand side. It's tutoring. Great webpage. I also send this to my students. Now, these are the workshops. I love this. Let me make this smaller again. Oops, sorry
No,
about
you're
that.
fine. You're fine.
This is a workshop link. This is where I actually found your guys' workshops. I actually sent this to my students. I actually have to put this back on my webpage, but I don't know if you want to take over while I click on
Sure,
things.
I could do that. I could just kind of guide you on what to
Okay,
do.
go
But
for it.
our motto for tutoring services at HCC is to get the help early and often. So if you're struggling with your courses and you need a little extra help, or you want to reinforce what you learn in the classroom, going to tutoring centers is excellent in supporting your coursework and helping you out whenever you get stuck on a problem. So I get asked a lot of questions like, is it for free? I said, yes, tutoring at HCC for our HCC students is free. And you can schedule an appointment and go ahead and scroll down, Cynthia. I might have lost her already. There you go. All right. So if you scroll down on our homepage, you have a couple of options. Scroll back up and show them the option 1 and 2. So the next question I always get asked is how can I meet with a tutor? Well, you have 2 options now. On Monday, you'll have a 3rd option. The first option is to meet with our tutors virtually using Microsoft Teams. The second one is to use Upswing. And the 3rd one will be posted by this weekend, and it's going to disclose information about how to meet with an in-person tutor at our physical locations. So our tutors will be housed within the academic success centers, which is basically known as the tutoring centers. So our tutors can help with many different subjects, especially in math and writing, health sciences, biology, chemistry, physics. You will have to check our tutoring schedule to see which subject is available at which location. So can you scroll down, Cynthia, to the bottom where we have the tiles? So our resources here will link you to the tutoring schedule page, as well as connecting with Upswing. So I also put in the chat the ASC tutoring flyer. So if you have a chance, open up the chat and click on that PDF file, and you can take a screenshot, you can save it to your computer so that you can reference it later. But the most important thing is to call our tutoring call center to make that appointment. Can you scroll back up, Cynthia, to option 1? I want everyone to see that option. Just click on that plus sign. And that's the phone number you would call to schedule an appointment. And notice the hours of operation for our call center. So our call center is great. We have representatives that can answer your question about, how do you meet with a tutor? How do you download Microsoft Teams so you can meet with a tutor virtually? Oh, my tutor, I need to change my appointment. I have to cancel it and make it for the next day. Can I do that? And our call center rep will work with you on that. They'll also let you know which tutor is available at what time. But I always get asked that question, do you have a physics tutor on Saturday? Well, yeah, we can look that up for you and find out which tutor is available. I just want to make sure that students understand that, if you get the help early and often, you won't struggle as much in your courses. So I don't recommend that you try to meet with a tutor the day of your test or the day the paper is due. That's not advisable. It's best to come in and plan that time. So put that as part of your time blocking, that you want to meet with a tutor 2 weeks before your paper is due. So you have plenty of time to work on your paper, to do your reviews before your test. And if you have any additional questions, you can meet with your tutor multiple times.
And can I interject? Because I do want students to know, because I've had this happen before where they're like, oh, well, my subject isn't math or science. That's not what I need somebody who can tutor me in a business class. Well, before you guys go in there and say, well, I can't go in there because they don't have the tutor for me, below, and I'm just going to use Juanita for this, but below you can contact whatever campus is closest to you, that particular manager, and ask them, hey, I noticed that there is no business class tutoring. Is that available, or can you find me somebody? Now, before you say no and it can't be possible because you just went in and you saw and you're like, hey, I didn't see anything for business, so I'm giving up. Don't do that.
Right. Ask the
me.
question that you need to ask, don't make assumptions. And it's always, that's why we were saying, it's always best to ask that question early instead of finding out at the last minute, oh, I could have met with somebody. I could have got some help. I probably would have done better in the course. So does anybody have any questions about tutoring services? I'm here now, I can answer them.
I have a question. Can you keep the same tutor, or do you get a different tutor every time?
Well, if you have developed rapport with one particular tutor and you work very well with them, it's not a problem to request the same tutor. All that we ask is that you don't try to block the tutor for 4 hours because our tutors are part-time and they need to meet with other students as well. So most of our tutoring sessions, in particular the virtual sessions, they're set up for an hour and a half. The in-person sessions about an hour. If the tutor knows that they do not have another appointment after your session with them, then they can extend the time, and that's strictly up to the tutor. If they know that, okay, we haven't exactly finished, discussing the topic, let me continue since I don't have another appointment. And, you can continue that way. But it's not recommended to make 3 or 4 appointments with the same tutor in one day. Because
No, I was
yeah.
saying like, what if you made it with the Monday tutor and it was the same tutor every Monday?
Yeah,
That's what I was saying.
well, the problem with advanced appointments, especially when it's a whole week in advance, is that you never know if something happens to the tutor. What if they're absent? What if you can't make it? And so then the tutor's waiting for you, and you're not showing up. So it's always a good idea to make the appointment like the day before. Maybe like if you want to meet with them on Monday, then make the appointment on Friday or Saturday.
Okay, I understand.
We just want to make
Thank
sure
you.
that we don't have a conflict with, the tutor not being available, and then we're rushing to help you find another tutor,
No, I understand.
Yeah.
And also, if you guys have any questions with regard to counseling, if you have any questions with regard, because this is a counseling tutoring kind of collaboration, or academic success. I know you call it Academic Success Center. So we try to work effectively for you. Want to answer your questions or concerns that you have for either side. So we're here. And again, like I stated before, now you know how to get a hold of us. Everybody here knows how to now kind of find our sites, and we have posted them up. So I'm going to post yours up too. So it's just, you can kind of cut and
We're
paste
here
them
for
on
you.
your
We're
own.
here to help you out. Don't hesitate to ask for help.
Okay. All right. And I'm going to let you take over, Juanita.
Oh, okay. Well, that was basically all I wanted to cover was, how you can get in contact with tutoring and how you can find general information. Primarily that phone number is going to help you the most. But if you don't have any other questions, I want to wish everyone the best of luck in their coursework this semester. And we hope to see you very soon in our offices. We hope to see you on campus when we return next week. So good luck. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much, guys, and please enjoy the rest of your day. And I hope that you guys take the time to really self-reflect and really think about what it is you guys really want to do and how you want to work, And again, our offices are always open to you guys. So please, please, please reach out whenever you need us.
Thank you. You
Thank
guys
you.
have a blessed day.
Thank you, Cynthia. You did amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you all.